issuance across the entire life of the bonds? And when will they be retired, and with what funds would we use to redeem those bonds? So, and those are the two items that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Wilson?
Hello, Judy Wilson. Been here 51 years. This is a big ask, a huge ask for our community to basically fund a new school or part of a new school. Even though there's been retirees, I can't believe that the budget was looked at and $1 couldn't even have been deducted. In the early 80s, the board went through every single line item. And I know because I was on the board there. And we cut unimaginable things that we had been paying for years. I don't understand how the budget can't be cut by $1. That's just absurd. And are you thinking about the people that live by Manning School, that live there and want to have a good school there if it's sold? This will be the 7th referendum. The last 6 have all said no. And I think that you need to tell the community, other than having retirees, what you're doing, what you're putting in it, instead of just having retirees. If they weren't retiring, what would you put in it? Maybe what you put in the last 2 referendums, which was really nothing. If you want the referendum to pass, you have to do it right. And you have to consider everybody, the seniors, the ones that live by Manning, who may not want the village to put a condo up or a storefront up, things like that. There hasn't been a traffic study for anything going around Miller. It's just not coming together. I know that you're listening, but please hear what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie Boback.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I've lived in Westmont since I think 2013. I grew up in Lombard, so not too far. I have 3 kids in the district right now. I don't have a specific question for you all. I just wanted to show my support. I think my experience in the district has been phenomenal. My kids have been supported every length of the way. I'm amazed at how awesome every staff member is in those schools, and I know it's tough. I don't want to pay any more for anything either, but I believe that schools and education are a foundation of any community, and I hope that we can find some type of agreement here. I've seen a lot of iterations of the referendum too, and this does seem to be one of the most copacetic for everyone. So thank you to the board members too. I appreciate your dedication and the time and energy you put into all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Okay. We'll move on to the discussion portion of the evening, the administration's recommendation to the board. Yeah.
After listening for a few years and carefully considering people and holding literally in total about 25 plus town hall meetings, we thought it was in the best interest of the citizens of this community and our students and our school district to recommend to build a new school on the Miller campus. And so that's what we are recommending. We did come down, we worked with our architects and our construction manager and reduced the original ask by several $1,000,000. I think the current request is for $68 million. when you're talking millions of dollars, that's about a 7% decrease from the original estimates. And I could say a lot more, but I'm more interested in giving the board members a chance to discuss and answering any questions. It's not easy to ask hardworking taxpayers, especially those on fixed income, especially seniors, to dig into their pockets, but there's really no other vehicle to do this. If we're just fair in considering our recommendation, every other community in this region pretty much has gone to this solution. I wish there was a different way, but there's not. This is how new buildings are funded in Illinois. And we take our responsibility to the taxpayers very seriously. The return on investment, I believe we have one of the most overachieving districts in the state and the country, and there's evidence to support that. This is in part the cost of delaying action over years of time, and we are at the point now where we think this is what is best for the citizens in the community, and it will require a sacrifice, and we are very cognizant of that. But every decision we make is with the citizens and our taxpayers in mind, and our students who are sacred to us. And as I said, in excess of 25 different iterations of town hall meetings. We've listened, we've discussed, we've argued, we've read all the comments, we've talked with village leadership, we've talked with the board, we've talked with citizens, we've listened, met with our architects and our construction manager, discussed this for hours as an administrative team, talked to neighboring superintendents and district leadership, and we feel that this is the most collaborative and healthy decision for all involved. And we're very grateful for the support we get from the citizens of this community. But today we are asking, once again, our recommendation is to build one new building on the Miller campus and for the board's consideration.
Jack, can you really quickly, I know that we've got, I don't know if we've got new folks in the audience or not, but everybody was able to get a packet of the town hall presentation. You don't need to go through it in detail. Can you just speak to kind of what they're looking at with each of these slides really quickly? I know plenty of the folks here have already been to the town halls, but for anybody who has not been.
Everybody has this packet, I hope, and if you don't, you can find it we can get one to you or find it online. It goes over a quick history. Initially, we looked at the Miller campus as being the answer. It is the most economical. The biggest fear we had was the impact it would have on the citizens whose homes that we would be asking for. We've reached, I would say, very solid agreements with 6 of the 7 homeowners and still discussion with the 7th. It's gone very amicably, I would argue. I think they would say the same thing. So we've made tremendous progress there. We looked at other locations. We heard from the community they did not want all of the campuses on the north end of Ogden, so we returned to the Miller location. There's advantages to the Miller location that are in this packet. Let's talk about that. That's on page 2, which includes we have not conducted a formal traffic study, but we have met with village leaders on multiple occasions, and they feel comfortable with this solution. They've said that on multiple occasions. We will conduct another traffic study. Joe Smith is here. He has some great insights. Joe, if you could speak briefly to the advantages of the configuration that we put forward as far as the traffic patterns there.
Well, and to clarify while Joe's coming up here, the traffic study, Spencer from the microphone. Is it on?
Yeah.
No? Okay. To speak really quickly on the traffic study piece of it, as you brought it up, the expectation is that as part of planning and zoning, there would be a formal traffic study that would be required as part of that planning and zoning process, just based on the sheer size, but unfortunately without beginning any official designs, we can't necessarily do that, and we can't officially begin designing until a referendum is decided.
But if Joe can speak to
Yeah.
because of course we've considered this, we've considered it with the village leaders. So if you could please mention.
The true benefit of the situation is the consolidation.
Turn the mic, yeah.
The true benefit of this situation is the consolidation piece. Another aspect of replacing the building as opposed to renovating, when we're replacing the building, we're able to build that building with design intent. Again, like the traffic pattern is one of the main features of the additional property. On the drawing, you can kind of see, it is a little difficult to see on the printed vision, but there is a bus lane and car lane on opposite sides of the school. So one, like the north side lot could be the bus lane. So again, all 7 buses dropping off kids would not have to be on city streets. The same thing would go in place on the south portion of the property. There would be a street that would connect Washington to Grant Street. So then again, that could be for parent parking, where instead of lining up all the way down Washington Avenue, they can go east and west on the district's property. So again, with us designing the new building, we're able to think about problems like that and address them by designing the building. We could do the same thing for ADA purposes. We could do the same thing for special ed needs. We could do the same thing for all that. With renovating, we're kind of handcuffed with certain things. If we're building new, we can address that through literally designing the building to fit.
Don't go too far. So the traffic issue is something that's been considered. The village leadership has signed off on it initially. So that is something that has been addressed, will be continued to address, as President Conover said. We may not have to displace students during construction. There is a possible configuration that could allow students to continue to be educated while we build around Miller and keep Manning in place. It is the location that, you know, the community, it is not consensus, but there was a pushback on having a school on this side, so we answered that question. It contributes to the revitalization of the Westmont downtown area, which I think the village leadership has also been excited about. That is something that's good for the taxpayers, the citizens. I think that's important. We've discussed the fact that to use the vernacular, kicking the can down the road, it's only getting more expensive. We have to do something. It's not a matter of if we do it, it's when, and the longer we've waited, the more expensive it has become. This is, in our opinion, the least expensive to the taxpayers in the long term. There are significant benefits to consolidation and having one school, which include reduced maintenance costs, upgraded utilities, and also that we can reduce staff. And one of the things that we have done is made reductions to the budget. I want to be clear about that in staffing over the last couple of years overall, but that will continue to be addressed, and consolidation will make that even more possible. Any fair assessment that these buildings have been maintained, but they're at the point, especially Manning, of replacement. Joe can speak much more knowledgeably with expertise about that. He's an expert in the buildings, and he's in there every day. It's not due to a lack of maintenance over the years. The building has come to the point where it either needs serious renovation or a new building. It's just the nature of the beast. We have all of this information that's present on the website and in the packet if you're interested. Everything that the citizens who have spoken, I'm grateful for, have spoken to, we have addressed. This is a longer conversation. I want to keep my comments brief, but the idea of detachment or annexation, the first question I would ask is, would you be willing to pay more money for less quality education? Because that is what would result from detachment or annexation. And I can go into detail about that. But check the performance records of our schools and the places that we would be attached to. Furthermore, it's a very involved process. The citizens of the community that would accept you have to vote on that. The citizens of this community would have to accept on that. And you'd still be paying taxes and those students would have to be housed somewhere. So there would be, and there's no place currently, so a building would have to be built or additions would have to be built. So from an economic standpoint, a return on investment standpoint, and from a quality of education standpoint, I think the citizens and the students of 201 lose on all three of those issues. So I could go on, but I'd rather have the board speak to their opinions. This is something that we have been our number one thinking point besides our academic success and our students' well-being we're going on over 2 years now. And we have taken this very seriously, and we have listened to the community, as I said, at over 25 different town hall, finance and facility committee meetings, in addition to taking other comments. So I do think, and I love this place. I've spent the last 14 years of my life here. I love our citizens and our kids. I am sorry for the sacrifice that has to be made. We don't take this recommendation lightly, but I am convinced with my experience of 37 years in education and my love for this community and its children and its people, that this is, as difficult as it will be for some taxpayers, the best solution that we can come to.
Do we know what the total cost of the bond will be over the life of the bond yet?
Unfortunately, Mr. O'Connor's plane was delayed in Europe, so he was on his way back. We can certainly put that front and center on the webpage. But as the gentleman mentioned, I mean, it's like a mortgage. You're paying, it's $68 million, but you're paying on interest over, we're estimating 30 years of time. So we can get that exact calculation, but we can get the exact cost. But as the gentleman mentioned, it's not like we're just borrowing $68 million. You're borrowing $68 million like a mortgage amortized over 30 years at an interest rate of, currently, the estimate is 4.75.
Well, and similar to a mortgage, right, similar to a mortgage. It's going to be so loud. My voice is so loud. Similar to a mortgage, right? Until you've gone through the pre-approval process, you don't actually know what your interest rate is. So until we actually know that we can go for the bonds, we will not know what our options are. I do know, unfortunately, Ron is stuck in Europe. I do know that he does intend to look at multiple options. With a bond passing, we have 3 years from that bond passing before we need to bond out all of those dollars. So some things, we don't have to essentially borrow all 68 million in year one. We could do what's called a step, which is essentially borrow a portion in year one, another portion in year two, another portion in year three, which would change kind of how it hits the residents and our taxes, right, in a more step, so it wouldn't be necessarily all at one time. But when we get there, Mr. O'Connor will, with our bond experts, will explore all of those options because there's costs to everything, right? If you decide to do it in a step, we're guessing that we're at 4.75 this year to bond out for 20 million of it, right? Next year, interest rates could be 5.75. They could also be 3.75, right? That's just the same as buying a house. You have those same things. So I know that is his intention, and we've got the 3 years. The step is a possibility to limit how it hits taxpayers. There was something else in there. The payments.
I had a question,
Yeah.
maybe it'll jog, because I believe we've kind of we touched bases on this over the years. And I think I remember asking, so I know he's not here, but from what you remember, once we take that bond out and that rate is set, that's the rate for the life. So we're not in a variable rate state,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, exactly like your mortgage. Your mortgage payment doesn't really change.
But non-variable.
Your principal on your mortgage payment doesn't really change, so that's consistent. So essentially you are protecting the inflation of those dollars, $1,000 today is still $1,000 in 20 years, it's still $1,000 in 30 years, whereas it wouldn't actually be. You're protecting that via this. So we do have that, yeah, as well.
But it sounds like we'd still be able to at least get an estimate based upon
Yeah.
maybe a range of interest rates to say this is the low end and this is the higher end. So if we could,
I believe what he's going to do, what we've done before, is say, if it passed today, this is the rate, here's the calculation. I'm pretty sure he will do that.
Yes,
So-
I know that is his intention, yes, and to show those different variables. And I also know that his intention is not to go the full length. He intends to try to pay these down whenever we have opportunities, which of course would be impacted by the potential savings from consolidation, which is really, yeah.
and can we go back to this traffic study question, I guess? It seems to me like, I guess I don't know what data points we would get after a traffic study is done. What's that gonna show us?
Well, I mean, it can't deny that there's going to be, you're increasing the student population from 200 to 600. So I would, to be sincere, there's going to be increased traffic in the area. But as Joe has mentioned, there's the
Jack, sorry to interrupt you. Your question is what? What data will we gather?
I mean, I guess
I don't think he's
what
saying,
data-
he's not asking Jack what the outcome will say, if it's positive or negative or in the middle, or is it, but you're asking specifically what are the data points, not what will they be, but what's the definition of the data point itself?
Right.
That's what you're
What's
asking,
the-
right?
What's the data point, and then I was going to ask a follow-up to that. What are the data points that we get out of a traffic study like this when there's a building?
I don't know.
Rob, would you be able to speak to that? Rob from Legat Architects has certainly gone through more traffic studies than we have.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The traffic study would initially look at current traffic patterns. So they would put down sensors on the road. They would look at current traffic patterns, anticipate or try to count the number of vehicles that are coming and going from all the houses. They would create a data point by starting with what's there existing. Then we would look at the population of the school, how many buses there are, how many staff members, how many visitors are anticipated on a daily basis, and try to anticipate which direction they're going to come from. So with the current design, the site design that we are proposing, at the end of the block, there's multiple entrances and exits onto the site. So the intent is that all the traffic isn't coming from one direction, but potentially coming from 3 different directions. So that's what the traffic study would try to anticipate is what, arteries are people going to use to get to the school, which streets would be affected, and what would be the impact of those streets.
So the outcome from a data standpoint is, it's an impact study. Sorry. What you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, I don't know if I'm hearing you right, but what I'm hearing you say is it's an impact study, and it would tell you potentially maybe recommendations for changing traffic patterns or maybe widening roads, or is that the kind of thing we would expect out of it?
And
right?
that would be in conjunction with the village saying, this is what we anticipate the additional load would be to traffic in the neighborhood. And then they would come back and say, well, maybe we need to look at one-way streets, or maybe we need to widen streets accordingly. So we would work hand in hand with them to determine what the impact would be.
So I personally have read environmental impact studies before. I've never read a traffic evaluation before, but I would expect that you wouldn't see a data point of 7.2 on something. You would see, here's what we foresee in terms of the alteration of traffic patterns, and here are some recommendations on how to mitigate those alterations in traffic patterns. I think that's what we would expect, right?
Correct.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then in the process, can I address a question to him, or do I?
Yes, because he's part of our discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the process, then,
Microphone, Mike.
in the process of this design and build, then what happens if the traffic study comes back and says we have to widen roads and it's going to take us 3 or 4 years to do that? What do we do at that point? Is there,
I mean, that's just a discussion with the village.
Meaning, are they willing to entertain that from the logistics and the cost of it?
So is that sort of one of the first steps in the process then, that we would have to do a traffic study?
Well, there was an talking about the zoning and, ordinance review. We would have to review that. If there's any zoning or ordinance variances that would be required, we would have to bring those to the village for consideration. And at that time, they may request a traffic study and more information be given to understand the better impact. But that process would all go hand in hand. So meaning we would want to start the design process, understand the footprint of the building, the size of the building, how many cars, how many people we're talking about, come up with a preliminary layout for the site design and then present it to the village for their review.
And I would add to that, so this is one of the things that has adjusted since our last time in particular. There's been quite a lot of construction and road construction over there, as you know. That was actually a big factor in the village being more supportive of this now. In the previous time, the village was less supportive of it, and in particular, they cited the current traffic patterns, at the time, the current road situation, the floodwater situation, et cetera. So since the village has done so much improvement over there in both of those things, that in particular was one of the reasons they cited that they're more in support of this now, because a lot of that infrastructure over there they feel like has been done and wouldn't need to be additionally done. Yeah.
So I have a piggyback on that, Rob, just from your experience. So this starts with a proposal, what kind of the best that we can do, I figure now that we've been doing is looking at the site, but when you're doing these studies, they have to take in consideration what our architects and construction experts are proposing. Does it start with a proposal first?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Correct. Like Joe mentioned that one of the things that we've considered is adding a street that cuts through the southern end of the site for pickup and drop off. One of the things that the village will insist on is getting as many cars off of the streets as possible. So by creating that, we're creating literally a block-long street, 2, maybe 3 cars lanes wide that could accommodate as many parents as possible for pickup and drop off. So it'd be that type of thing that we want to review with them and make sure they.
And being experts, you are already anticipating.
Yes, absolutely.
Issues and then solutions.
Correct. And traffic, pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic is a major issue. So yes, we're already thinking about it.
To Dina's point, and Rob, I want you and Joe to speak to this, the current, which is not the final, but the proposed current design adds additional opportunities to alleviate some of those traffic concerns.
Yes.
Can you speak to that, please? The bus route and the other additional street almost that's being created?
So we talked about the street. We've also are suggesting that bus pickup and drop off would happen on the north side of the site that Joe already mentioned. Then the staff parking lot would be on the east end of the property with its own entrance. So cars could be coming into the site from one direction, buses from another. Teachers that are coming to park for the day would be coming from a third. So how that impacts and that traffic pattern runs through the neighborhood would need to be determined. But we feel that we've made some good strides towards separating that traffic flow by designing the site in a manner that can accommodate that different flow.
So a little bit of an unfair add-on question. Have you ever worked on a project before in a neighborhood that looks like this neighborhood with the population density and the size of the school and the width of those roads?
Me personally?
Your company?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And so while we haven't built a new school in a neighborhood like this in no one can remember how long, your company has.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you've solved these problems.
Correct.
Have any of them ever led to a 2, 3, or 4 year delay to actually build the school because
No.
you had, yeah. All right,
No, usually the process is an amicable process. There's, public meetings like this to discuss the proposals, especially with the village. Once they're involved, it's a public hearing, public discussions.
So while we're solving this problem for the first time and no one remembers how long, you guys do this all the time.
Correct.
Thanks.
Did your company build Arrow School in Burbank, Illinois?
We did.
That is a extremely, I worked there and have lived there my entire life before moving to Westmont. That area is extremely populated. There are now 3 schools, 4 if you count the one I work at just down the road. I would say that is way overpopulated and condensed compared to Miller's School for the amount of kids who go to St. Lawrence, which is right next door, and then Kennedy Elementary, which is right across the street, and then you have Arrow Cooperative, which was built. So to the comment of what delays would that cause, do we have to widen roads, that was not something that ever had to happen at Arrow. And that is a more densely populated area with, I would say, hundreds more students attending those 3 schools. Arrow Cooperative is a special education cooperative, so all of those children are bused by SUVs or special education buses. So they have hundreds of SUVs and buses showing up every single day on top of parent pickup and drop off. And then you have next door St. Lawrence, which is a high school. So you have kids driving, parents drop off, and then you have the elementary school, which has buses, and they all go at the same time, all 3 of them. My point being that it is completely possible to have a school built in a densely populated area that has a high population of students coming in on buses and cars and walking, and not have to have a delay in terms of roads being widened or things like that.
And Arrow, no, exactly. And Arrow took a similar approach with anticipating cars and vehicles coming from different directions to try to mitigate the impact on the neighborhood.
Yes. How do you think that worked out? I mean, I just want to hear, like, you drive by there all the time, right?
I don't actually drive past Arrow. My school is before Kennedy and Arrow and St. Lawrence, but it's congested. I'm not going to say that it's not, but that's also 3 schools all starting school at the exact same time. One thing, my school, which is right down the road, it's about 6 blocks away, we basically made a one-way street in order to adjust to the traffic, but that actually had nothing to do with Arrow. What you're mentioning is that Arrow has a specific lane for parent drop-off. Mm-hmm. They created a lane for the bus drop-offs. So they did what essentially we are planning on doing, is creating these different avenues. Teachers come in one way, buses come in this way, parents come in this way, and that's essentially what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. And so far, I mean, of course, there's always going to be a little bit of congestion at drop-off and at pickup, but I would say, I wouldn't say it's horrific by any means.
Not for you this time. I don't know if anyone else has a comment for that, because it sounds like, yes, it's information that we're continuously working on, traffic-wise, and that we will get more answers. And we will have more forums to even discuss as we propose solutions for that. And so I would just have questions for my fellow board members, besides the traffic. And this is our opportunity to speak with each other about this, all 7. What other issues gives you pause, just with the building, I don't know, with this project and the referendum, if there's any other topic that I'd like to get from you guys?
So I don't have anything that gives me pause per se. However, because what we're here to discuss, part of what we're here to discuss tonight is the actual language proposed by the administration, right? That's correct? Right. I don't see a mention, and maybe this is the right thing. I don't really know how these things are really supposed to be worded, but I don't see a mention in the wording about the location. And is that something that we don't want to ask the administration to adjust in their recommendation? And I say it truly as an open, because I don't really know. It caught my attention that it wasn't in there, so.
And I agree with Carlos. I was actually going to make that same comment, that there isn't any mention of location in the question.
We consulted with people who do these ballot issues all the time, legal and et cetera. That was not something that they included, but we could take that, if that's what the board wants, we could bring it back and hear their opinion on it and give that back to you and see where you want to move.
I mean, I don't know what other board members think. My position on it is not so much that it should be in there. My position on it is that if the team that put together the language didn't suggest it, is it because they suggest omitting it, or they didn't know or didn't think to include it, right? And, because those are different things. And so if their response is, no, it doesn't make sense to include that in the language for these reasons, because when we do these referendums, these are the reasons why, I'm all ears, right? If they say, no, if you guys want to include that, it makes perfect sense, then to me, it feels like it should be included. But I'm not suggesting either way. I hope I'm making sense.
You are, and we'll take that concern and bring it to the experts who do this for a living and get their feedback and give it to you.
And my concern would be that it seems like location is very important to the community, and so I think that when you go have that discussion, you should have the discussion of the location's very important to the community, and it's something that probably should be, at least in my view, should be in the question itself.
So if I want to make sure that we're giving clearer direction to the administration. Does everybody else generally agree with getting more information on the ballot language and location? Cool. So what I am hearing is an ask out to the team that does this, our legal team. We'd like to know if they suggest we omit location information, if they suggest we include it, or if they didn't consider it. And if they didn't consider it, can they consider it and give us an opinion on it? And also an opinion on if we were to add it, what would it impact? So I do know from our last conversation, the ballot language, there's a reason it goes through lawyers. And we had some, how it's said matters. All the words matter in it. So I would just want an understanding of if we did add it, what does that, it is essentially, it is a contract with the resident. What's in that ballot language? So whatever we say is true, is our contract with them, right? Which is why sometimes the ballot language tends to be a little bit vaguer, where it can be. So having an understanding on like, okay, if we decide that we do want it in that language, what does it mean for us as a board? What are we saying? Because it is a contract essentially with us. Is that fair for everybody? Yeah?
Yes.
Cool.
This meeting's being taped, and we'll have Ron and the attorneys develop this language, review this portion of the meeting, and give us a response.
Cool.
Thank you.
Jack, can you also, I didn't hear everything that you said because it's a little bit hard to hear over here, or maybe it's just me losing my hearing, but can you address the comment or the question about addressing annexation of other districts? I think somebody made that comment.
So we can't speak specifically to the comment. What we can ask is we can ask Jack if we considered annexation during the part of this referendum. We have to make sure that, I know, but that's the piece of it. So is that what you're asking, Jack?
That's what I'm asking, Jack.
So,
If we considered any annexation during this.
yes. And if that made any sense, we would pursue it as an option. The students' education has to be paid for by taxpayers. So no matter if they were annexed into a new district, most of the districts that border us have higher tax rates than we do, number one. So the taxpayers would still be paying more money than they're currently paying, or they would still be paying. Secondly, they have to be housed somewhere, and they don't currently, to my very strong knowledge, have empty buildings to house our students in. The other point is, for consideration, what kind of an education do you want for your kids? Please do a thorough assessment of the performance of the students in this district compared to any district, any. So the point is, yes, we have, and furthermore, so not only would economically it would not save the taxpayers of this district money, if it was even could be pursued, number one, but secondly, they'd be going to districts that are not performing as high as this one, and third, the other districts in this area that are already at capacity would have to vote to accept us, along with our people voting to be moved into another district.
Yeah.
So for all of those reasons, this has been thoroughly considered. One of the most beautiful visionary moves that was ever made in this community was some 50 years ago, where and I've talked to the forebearers of this community who said they consciously wanted a high school for their kids so the kids of Westmont did not feel like second-class citizens at Hinsdale Central and Downers North. I had nothing to do with that, but I thought it was a brilliant move. So they created a high school for the kids who lived in this community. And that's their vision, and it's come to fruition. And I think our kids are outperforming the kids in the local areas. Look at the data. So why would we sacrifice that beautiful visionary move? It's still going to cost. The kids still going to need to be housed somewhere. So yes, that's been thoroughly considered, and it doesn't seem like something that the other districts would be even amenable to, let alone the citizens of this community. You still have to pay taxes at maybe a higher rate for an inferior education. We've considered that thoroughly.
If I can too, to like kind of put it into layman's terms, because I'm a real geek about this stuff and I had to look it up too, specifically about annexation. Essentially, we're talking about, from a taxpayer standpoint, we're talking about either dissolving there's like three options: dissolving the district, consolidating the district, or like a forced consolidation. The forced consolidation would be something that Illinois State School Board essentially forces districts to do. That hasn't happened in a very long time. And dissolutions and consolidations have all but stopped in the last probably 10 or 15 years. And so I wanted to figure out, right, what does it mean to do this? What would it really look like? Because to the point of like, have we reached out to other districts? It's not really another district's choice, to be honest, because any type of dissolution or annexation requires a referendum in all of the districts that are impacted. So for us, that would mean a referendum for us two referendums, actually. One for us because we don't have any unit districts that we serve. One for us to essentially join all of the middle school districts, K through 8, and then another one for us to join, potentially multiples, the high school districts. And then you've got the two high school districts that were solved, so 83, which is Hinsdale, and 99, which is Downers. So both of those communities would have to agree on a referendum, and then also all of the middle school districts that we could potentially go to, which certainly Marker could be one of them, but you're also talking about Clarendon Hills and the other ones, et cetera. So you're talking about a lot of referendums that need to pass and a lot of time that would go into that, which, hey, I'm all down for figuring out the time. But it is just a lot of moving parts that need to happen, which is why it doesn't happen very often. The other part of that is part of that consolidation or dissolution. Essentially, our buildings don't go away and these problems don't go away. So we are a package deal for these districts, essentially, right? So we would have to get these districts to agree to take on our 100-year-old buildings and all of their problems when all of them have already passed multiple referendums to do those upkeep items that, unfortunately, the way that Illinois State funding is structured, it just is. To do big stuff like this, you got to do a referendum, and all of our neighboring districts have passed one, if not multiples, to do that upkeep. So we'd essentially have to kind of like, we'd have to sell to the other districts, take on our buildings that we know that are falling apart. So it's a hard sell, and that is part of the reason why we haven't necessarily reached out to any other districts specifically to answer that part of it, but we have explored it, and I've explored it personally as a board member really deeply because it's fascinating.
And in fairness
Yeah.
too, okay, so let's talk about this. The other communities that this would be a possibility, they've all passed referendums to build new facilities, all of them. Either they're not that wise or they figured this out, that you have to do this occasionally as a community. So these districts that we could possibly be annexed into have all passed referendums. Their community, their taxpayers have said, yes, we are going to invest in new buildings for our kids.
I think another key point is just the size of the schools too. You know, our schools, they are small, and I think that's an advantage for the students. You know, I love that for the students. A different school, you know, you look at Downers Grove North, how many students is that, 3,000 compared to our school? So, you know, a high school, the principal, he knows every kid here. You know, I think that's awesome.
And also, they would assume that the other districts would have room to house the students from West.
And to that point, when we were so board members attend or can attend this conference called the Triple I, and it's from all the state of Illinois board members and superintendents and all the things. So I actually met two brand new board members from Marker, and we kind of were talking about the referendum and these things, and one of the things they specifically mentioned was the fact that like they are bursting at the seams. They don't have enough room right now, given their current population. I also worked at Hinsdale Central, and you can just, I mean, you can do a quick Google search. Hinsdale Central is bursting at the seams right now. They don't have enough room for the current population of their students. So again, the multiple leaps and bounds, that community would have to vote yes to accept our students. Then they would have to have a place to house them, which they currently don't, meaning another referendum would have to be passed to add on to their buildings or build another additional building. Or they assume ours, which then again, a 90-year-old building still needs maintenance. So again, just kind of the long run around of this is that it sounds easy, really, it sounds like an easy thing, like just we're a small district, fold us down and separate the community. It's not that easy, and it, again, in the long run, I don't think would save the taxpayers any money. In fact, I think it would hurt the taxpayers. And to Kevin's point, one of the best things about Westmont and why I moved here was because of the small school district. My child in kindergarten gets such an excellent education because we have paraprofessionals in there, we have small class sizes, we have this ability to support students, and it shows in the data. It shows in the success of our students. And when you put those students and when you put kids in this massive school district of 3,000, you're not going to get to play volleyball and also be the lead in the school play and do this and this because you're fighting against all 3,000 people. This small school district allows our students such an opportunity to be so much more diverse.
Well, and to your point on the tax piece of it, the cost piece of it, one of our, and Frank, arguably one of the biggest parts of our job is that as school board members is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the district, which is the reason that we have had 6 referendums, in that our fiduciary responsibility is to utilize our tax dollars as best possible, and that is the build new over renovate, right? We're going to get that is ultimately where the decision to build new comes from, is that if we build new, right, we get a significantly longer lifespan out of that building for essentially the same amount of money, arguably maybe even less, depending on what's going on behind the walls at Manning. And that is the best use of our taxpayer funds. It would have been best used 15 years ago when it cost $20 million or $27 million. Unfortunately, that was not the will of the community then. However, we still have the same problems, and now they cost over twice as much to fix. On the annexation part of it, right, the fiscal, our fiduciary responsibility there is, again, to our taxpayers. All of these districts have higher tax rates. All of these districts are significantly larger. In all of these districts, our taxpayers get less for paying more. They get less of everything, less ability to do this, right? Less ability for their students to be known, less, right? Less impact. I think a lot of people come here. Look, people move based. Schools is like number one why people make a decision, and we're rated as high as they get. And it brings people here. People come here because you can have something that you literally cannot find anywhere else in DuPage County, in a super unique location, in an amazing place, in a wonderful small town where we get to know people, and that comes with the ability to impact things on a very different level annexing and doing those things is more costly for our taxpayers, which is why personally I would not be in support of it, because it's not the best use of our taxpayer funds. And as a board member, that's my fiduciary responsibility. All of the other things are all pieces that are lovely and wonderful, but ultimately as a board member, I got to use the taxpayers' funds in the most responsible way, and annexation is not using it in the most responsible way.
And I'm going to don't put the mic down, Leah. I'm going to take advantage of you speaking about that responsibility, because we've touched on it a little bit, but, and we've said it, so just speaking more, and I know Jack can also, but paying for this, and we've talked about it even as board members, like if this doesn't pass, what cuts do we have to make? Say now, in that responsibility of making cuts with education, can we fix our building?
So, just from a very, very high level, what we've looked into, and I've looked into this, I'm on the Finance and Facilities Committees, and have looked at this budget for every year since I have been on the board for 6 years. Our budget is roughly $35 million a year. Our total budget, that is operating, that is all the things, that's every single dollar, $35 million a year. The base cost to just fix some of these things is in the 60 million. Well, 60 million was renovate. The base cost to just fix some of these things, I think, was in the 40 million, Joe, just total cost on all of those. And all this documentation is on the website, as we all know, right? So we have $40 million of repairs, and we have a $35 million budget every year. There is no cutting that will ever pay for that, which is how it is unfortunate. Wow, is it unfortunate? And our total amount that we can borrow is around $30 million, but we'd have to, that's a whole other thing. We couldn't shut the schools down for a year, 2 years, 5 years, and even pay for that. And we would have to cut so very much. It's not a good use of our funds, but it also is not realistic. It is also how schools are funded in Illinois. There is a reason why referendums have passed in almost all of our surrounding communities, all across the state, because it is the only way to fund this type of work. We have cut a ton from the budget, and we have looked at darn near every single dollar. And we have tried to find it, and we have already this year, just in particular, we cut stipends, as we know. I was just talking to a parent about it the other day. There was something that we had a stipend last year that we couldn't have this year. We've cut every single year in addition to retirements, but we've tried to limit it as much as possible, and we're at the end of that ability. So there's just not enough money in our budget to cut to pay for these things, because we have Band-Aided for so long, and Band-Aids cost more, right? Band-Aids just cost more than everything. The junior high air conditioning is a really perfect example. That junior high air conditioning we had no choice but to replace because the refrigerant was became illegal, which just happens. And so then we were paying to find it, paying more and more and more for the refrigerant to fix it, right, which costs more. So that was more coming out of our savings to just try to keep the air conditioning going. And then ultimately we couldn't find it anymore. And we came to a point where the only option is to replace it at a cost of $7 million, which, thanks to inflation from 2020 to 2022, was up from $3 million of expected. So these are great examples of where we just don't have the money, and we also don't have a lot of great choices. And boy, I wish we would have done it previously.
When you look at this packet and the inflation that we are up against, I think our district is in a really unique spot right now with the potential opportunity to sell Manning, for the village to have the opportunity to build business that would support lowering our taxes. And so you kind of combat your tax increase with a potential tax revenue decrease. And then I also want to talk about our working cash and health, life, safety. If this does not pass and we have to utilize that level of income, that is also that impacts our taxes
Yeah.
without referendum. So if this doesn't pass, it doesn't mean there's no tax increase for our community. It means there's a tax increase to continue Band-Aiding the problems that we're up against, which just feels irresponsible at this point. And I think we're at a space where we have a lot of support from the village also in order to make this as feasible as it could potentially be for our community.
Rob, could you speak real briefly about health, life, safety? What types of projects are health, life, safety stuff, which is why we have to do them legally, and also why we are able to borrow money without referendum for these. But can you speak to like what the type of projects those are?
Sure. So the state takes very seriously the health, life, safety, the well-being of students in the classrooms, but they will fund things or allow you to borrow money to fund projects that support that. And the clearest example I can give is you have to have heat in a building, right? You can't teach during the winter when there's no heat. You don't need air conditioning to teach, right? The cooling months are a little bit of September, a little bit of May. So you can use life safety funding for heating and providing fresh air, which are code requirements, but not for air conditioning, which is very difficult because nowadays the systems are usually combined. But there's things like lockers. You don't need lockers to teach. But they are essential in most schools, and place for kids to store their things, their book bags, their coats. So the state's very particular about that. So we have to be very careful, and oftentimes we meet with state representatives just to clarify to understand exactly what they will approve and what they won't.
So it's not a matter sometimes of like what of these $40 million in projects we are able to complete. Health, life, safety stuff is like, you must complete this whether you have the money in your budget or not. And if you don't have the money in your budget, you need to borrow it. Yes?
Plus there's a time frame, yes. And there's usually a time frame, and it's usually 5 years depending on how the request is written to the state. You have to complete the job within that time frame and then submit paperwork certifying that you've done it and how much you spent on it.
Joe, and maybe, I don't know, Jack, if you can speak to this. For the junior high, because that ended up costing so much more, unfortunately, because we're planning on doing it in 2020, and COVID just
the way it
just
goes.
It really got us. We used a combination of health, life, safety, and bonding.
No, I think that was exclusively working cash.
Okay, that was exclusively working cash.
Yeah, working cash.
Yeah.
The example we always use is that's our district credit card, basically. We have a $30 million cap on that, I believe. We can use that until we pay a certain percentage of it down, then we can issue more. But we're capped at 30 million. And exclusively, that's how the district has survived for the last 30 years, is essentially using the working cash to take care of the biggest problems and then wait until they pay it down to do it again. And then the cycle continues. You take care of the top 2 projects, the rest has to wait. You get to the next rounding where you have capacity to bond and you deal with the top 2 projects and the rest has to wait. And then the list grows, the problem gets bigger, and you can't get out of it.
And the fixes keep getting more expensive.
The fixes keep getting more expensive. The money we have to spend to keep these buildings suitable for use, again, it just adds up, delays the process, prolongs the process, the cycle continues.
Thank you, Joe.
$68 million, does that include money for any other projects in the district, or is that just for the elementary schools?
So that is exclusively for the new building. So the kind of the strategy that I see from this standpoint is if the elementary school is dealt with, the funding sources we have available with working cash at capacity above what we've had because we keep maxing it out. But that fund and the life safety could maintain and upgrade the junior high here in South. Again, if you think of the junior high project, yes, it was $7 million, but what we did with that project was incredible. Basically, every ceiling was replaced, every lighting fixture was replaced. Everything that was touched or could be touched was done with that project so that it was off the list. And again, The following almost 3 years, we did not use the service budget of that building. It almost exclusively got used at Manning to keep it afloat through this referendum conversation, and it's kind of how we've managed it for 20-plus years.
And high school's in,
The high school is in relatively good shape. The high school, though, will always be a very expensive building. The design of it, the HVAC system of it, the amount of equipment we have here. We have 16 rooftop units. We have 2 chillers. We have 8 boilers. So again, it's an unbelievable amount to maintain, but it's in relatively good condition. The elementary schools are the cash cow.
how about South?
South is in very good shape. Again, that was renovated in the mid-2000s through different projects and, whatever. But South is in very good shape with the exception of the student side roof and the parking lot.
Yeah, so the things I think that are not included in the 68 million that we will still need to repair.
Right.
We've got some roof stuff at South. We have,
Yeah.
we have a roof leak here, I believe,
Yes,
that we've
we
got to
have-
take care of.
Yeah.
A floating, fascinating, bubbling roof that is.
Yeah, there's a different one, but yeah, but again, I think based on the funding sources we have available with life safety and working cash, if we can get rid of the cash cow being the elementary schools, that should be enough to manage things.
So it's a combination of, we would use some health, life, safety to do some of those repairs, because you do need roofs to have school.
Right.
Right, Rob? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So we can use some of the health, life, safety for some of those roof issues.
Right.
And then in essentially clearing the coffers, if you will, taking the 2 elementary schools' maintenance out of the budget, or
Right.
putting it back into the budget, a combination of that and the efficiency wins would allow for us to take care of those other parking lots, et cetera, save up and take care of curbing and some of those smaller things that are not health, life, safety, but are very genuine, like, real concerns.
That's the advantage of working cash, is that basically we can use it to pay for what life safety won't. But if our working cash is maxed out, we don't have that capability, so.
Which is where we're at right now.
Which is where we're at. So again, if the referendum can take care of that, it would also free up working cash, and then you're in a much better situation.
Yeah, and Heather just said May of 27 is when our.
We have,
Yeah.
we have until May of 2027 before we can take more working cash funds.
And that's only a portion.
Correct.
Fun story, working cash was set for districts X number of years ago. It was arbitrarily set. It depended on how much debt you had at any given time, and that is just what districts have for working cash now and to this day. It grows with inflation or up to 5%, just like our levy. It's capped at 5%, so any year that inflation's been over 5%, working cash has not grown. And so that's why you will see like working cash available for different districts at wildly differing amounts that make kind of no sense. And it is literally because it was like an arbitrary, this is how much debt you have now, and that's your maximum. And that's what one of the biggest reasons we're stuck at. It's fascinating.
I'm just curious about one more thing. What things were removed from the original proposal when it was $70+ million to get it down to 68? Rob, are you able to address that, or Jack, do you want to
You're
address
talking
it?
about the November
So there was a
24 proposal when it was the new school essentially over at Oakwood?
No, I think initially when some of the town halls were going on, there was a discussion about it being 72 or something like that.
Some of those funds got pushed to what will be our life safety or working cash in the future.
Okay.
So we had to remove those.
How did you guys do that? How'd you figure that out? And maybe Rob, because I know Rob was part of that, I'm pretty sure.
Figure out like what to remove.
Yeah, like how did you guys make that?
It's essentially off priority, overall district liability. I mean, that's kind of how our priorities list is set. It's kind of, the projects that are listed on there are ranked as the liability they would cost the district.
So the new school itself wasn't downsized or de-engineered, it was just some of these other projects that were...
Well, I think it was a mixture of both. There was some removing of projects, but then there was some, had more of a program review the second time around, which was like we knew more or less exactly how many classrooms we would need, how many meeting spaces we would need. So we were able to cut some square footage out of the original kind of conversation just by that, which again was just kind of part of the process.
There's less money in contingency. It's got me a little concerned, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there was some
But,
cut out of that.
you know, we try, it's a response to the community saying, can you cut some more? Can you take into consideration what you're asking us for? So there's, you know, it's a leaner budget. And frankly, I'm a little concerned about it, but this is part of what we're talking about with listening to people and responding, not just with words, but with action. So we sliced the budget. There was some value engineering done there. So, you know, and it's not tremendous, but, you know, 72 to 68 million is $4 million. There's less contingency. There's less room for error. There's, you know, we're not going to have as much to build with, to be frank about it, but it's still, we'll get the job done.
If I understand, I just want to restate if I'm understanding this correctly. We did cut a little bit of square footage wherever we could, yes, from the building.
Some.
But ultimately, a portion of it was we kind of just moved the dollars. We're going to spend those dollars, which means that a project was projects or a project were deprioritized in the list. So we didn't move the money spend because, again, all of these things still have to be done. We must maintain our buildings. We must maintain, we are required to, right, by law. So we didn't necessarily, we moved money off of the potential referendum, and it is still projects that we will have to fix. We just adjusted when they will be done. So something got moved, something got adjusted. Is that a fair explanation? Okay.
Hey, is part of the savings land acquisition also?
The operating principle when it comes to land acquisition is the sale of Manning should be able to pay for the purchase of the 7 properties that are to the east of Miller, and there should be a small net gain. That was the budget. So, and once again, when you talk about economics, we looked at the property at Naperville and Cass, acquiring those properties. It became not a feasible option because of traffic concerns and because Commonwealth Edison was not interested in giving us property that we would need to build an adequate school for our kids in the district. That property, all those properties, would have cost us twice as much as the acquisition of the citizens' houses at Miller. We looked at there's not a lot of open space where you can build a school in this community. When we looked at the Ty Warner property, if we were to have paid full price for it, it would have been even more expensive than that. So this is the most economic option of far as building new. We looked at the bank downtown adjacent to Manning. It's currently not for sale. That's an issue. I don't think we want to get into a legal battle with a major corporation. But even if we did, the village was really asking us to consider the whole picture, and being able, making that happen would eliminate opportunities for this community to grow and for the tax base to grow, because
Yeah.
you would be replacing. So,
By whole picture, I wanna make sure that we specify it, because Heather did allude to it as well. Schools are not tax-paying entities. And so Manning Elementary and all of the space that we own in downtown does not create any taxes that support this community, because the school supports the community. Schools are non-taxed entities. So us no longer being there, and this is in conjunction with the potential bank property, which is nearby, makes for a interesting place, right, arguably, for developers potentially of some kind. But the point on all of that is any development on the land that we currently own increases the tax revenue from the downtown, which then decreases, as residents, our tax requirements. So it is the only way that we're really able to do that.
How does that affect us moving out of the TIF district? Because Miller's not in the TIF district, is it?
Miller is not in the TIF district, and very early on, the village did say we do have we have the agreement with the village that 25% we get every year, and then we also have the money that's been generated by the TIF so far. Now, the TIF hasn't necessarily performed as well as everybody expected it to and as quickly, so there's not a ton of money in there. But the village made it very clear early on that we will figure out any way to make sure. There are lots of ways, and we'll figure out a way. Because in that original agreement, the agreement was that the money had to be utilized at Manning, which was part of the TIF, but the village is amenable, and their intention is to make sure that we are whole for anything that was part of that. Yeah. I do want to just time check it at 7:25. We'd originally kind of agreed to 45 minutes for the initial batch of public comment, and then for us to discuss for about 45 minutes, and then another 45 minutes to allow for additional public comment. So we're kind of coming to a point where we need to start closing up our discussion. For the folks in the room, if you now have public comment based on anything that we might have discussed, do feel free to find Shannon, who's right down here, to fill out a card, because we will have the same amount of time for public comment at the end available. So I want to make sure everybody got an opportunity to kind of go down. So I'd like to go down the line and see if anybody else has any other questions from the board to wrap this up. Kevin, can we start with you?
I'm just concerned if we don't do it now, the future costs, because if you look at the past, I wish it would have passed then, built a school, 2014, 2015 timeframe instead of having to do it now. So that's really my concern.
I have nothing more.
Besides just inflation and the overall cost, I think what Leah said earlier, the goal of the board is for what's best for taxpayers, right? Nobody wants to increase your taxes. We live here. We don't want our taxes increased. But unfortunately, this is how major renovations have to happen to schools in Illinois. I wish Illinois had a better system, but this is what it is. And all of the surrounding communities have passed referendums in order to make these life changes. These are not, like it said multiple times, you can't just cut $1 million here and make the changes that need to be changed. These are 90-year-old buildings that have significant infrastructure issues. And this is also not, I want to reiterate this part, because I've seen and heard this a few times. It's not that these buildings have not been kept, that we haven't been working on them this entire time, that we would just let them to rot. These are things that they're so old, they need to be redone. The perfect example is the HVAC system, right? There are just things that need to be done within these schools that no amount of cutting here and savings here is going to make up for that. And again, that is just unfortunately how funding works in Illinois. And so if we just continue to bandage things, again, to reiterate what Heather said, your taxes will still increase because we will just have to borrow more money to then put on more Band-Aids, right? So no matter what, these are things that need to be fixed because they have to be. We have to have heat at Manning. And so either way, this needs to be done. And so the best financial use of your money and our money as taxpayers is to build new. And to have the consolidation that we would have, the money we could save from that, the fact that the property buying will be offset by the selling of Manning. I think we're making a really smart financial choice here.
Ditto.
That other thing I'll just add is something I think about, because I think at this point, this happens and a school is built, none of us, and not that we're here as board members, but just to reiterate the point that none of our children will probably be taught in this new school. But that's how important this is for this community. I'm proud to hear people say, I want to get to your schools, I want to move there, I want to find a house so I can go to a school. In this district based on the success of our kids, the teachers, the staff. And so this is an investment for me, and I invest in tiny things. This is probably the the hugest thing I can invest in, and it's children education in our community. So I think it's a point that we have to do it. I don't want to see the outcome of status quo hanging on to a pipe and manning with a Band-Aid on it or a roof. I think we have to be responsible to do this, and we take it seriously, like Dr. Baldwin said, all of us said, like it's to ask our community to do this. I don't think it's a wish, I think it's a need, a necessity, and to keep our success educationally with our kids.
Can I add just one more thing? I think it would be irresponsible not to go for a referendum, not to support our kids and their families and our buildings. Our school district, you can't get better than our school district, although our administration is going to try year over year. And I think that we can sometimes take that for granted, knowing what a great education our kids are getting, and it would be devastating to see the impact of having to cut to bare bone our kids' education and experience here in Westmont just to put more Band-Aids on buildings.
I agree with all the things. A couple things for the board, but then also, I'd say my own personal opinion, this is the best use of our money. I wish that this money was spent 20 and 15 years ago. I wish that the community had supported it then. I wish that the community had supported it 15 years ago. It would have not changed my decision to join this community all those years ago if I had a referendum expense on my tax bill, because I came here like many others for a very different experience for my children than I had. I grew up and I went to the other, I was in the other districts, and I didn't want that for my kids. And I was able to choose that and still be close to my family and still be in, I think DuPage is pretty awesome. I think we're phenomenal. But in any event, so we don't have a lot of good choices left anymore. And I wish it was spent then. But the question for the board, and what I need you guys to think about right now, is the administration is asking for us to take a look at the ballot measure. Our job is to decide if the ballot measure goes on the November ballot. And to remind everybody of what that looks like as far as a timeline is concerned, the deadline to make that decision is August 23rd. That is the county clerk's deadline, because the county clerk needs to have enough time to print all of those ballots for the whole county. So backing into that, we have 2 more meetings between now and then. We have July 21st and we have August 18th. The administration has asked that we decide on that ballot measure on July 21st, but the August 18th is also an option for us. We set up this special meeting as a meeting for the community, really, to be able to speak to us in as close of a way as they possibly can with our rules and regulations. So, have the point of this was for that, right? So that was why we decided to do this, and I want to ask the board, do you guys feel like we have done that? Would you like to set something up again later? What are your thoughts and feelings? Did this night fulfill as much of that as you can?
Answering your question with a question, but making a decision in July about the referendum, what does that time give us, as opposed to making a decision in August? Like, I guess either way.
Yeah, so two things. New board members would not necessarily know this, and this is a good reiteration. Thank you for bringing it up, Adina. Once we have made the decision to put something on the ballot, essentially what we can say as a board and as an administration changes. We can no longer We cannot pick a side as a board or as an administration. We can't say you must do this. We become a source of information, and we do have to limit ourselves to that information. So as if we decide on July 21st, essentially we make that decision then, and that's where we're at. If we decide on the 18th, that's the biggest thing. Jack, is there anything else, or is there any other, is there a benefit, any other benefit that I'm missing to deciding on on July 21st over August 18th?
Our thinking is the sooner that there's a decision, that the sooner we can continue to give information to the community. Because the truth of it is, if there's no decision that's been made, so the discussions are really just, theoretical in nature. If the board were to make a decision in July, from that point to November, it gives us more time to communicate, to share information, to take questions, to spread the word in the community. Because originally, the first time, when there were nearly 7,000 votes cast and we were one vote short of a tie, one of the biggest concerns that we heard from the community is that we were going too quickly. So I don't think anybody could say that now, but we want to make sure that we're out in front of it, that there's plenty of time to share information, answer questions, and connect with the community.
Can I ask, what's the risk waiting until August 18th?
Well, to be frank, I mean, we could, because the deadline is until August 23rd. Our responsibility, primary responsibility, is the education of our young people, and we take that very seriously. So the opening weeks of the school year, this is, not that we don't work hard throughout the whole year, but in August, we're gearing up, welcoming our kids back, making sure we got the best education system possible. A little bit of lead time gives us more time to address these issues. Because technically, if you decide in late August, we basically have September and October to communicate with the community with an election the first week in November. That extra month of lead time gives us more of an opportunity to hold meetings, communicate, answer questions, get information out. That's the thinking.
I think that this is essentially the flip that happens. When we decide, it's no longer we're taking information in order to make a decision. It is, the administration essentially becomes a push information out about a decision that was made. So the opportunity for the community to give us information before we make a decision, that's what we get here. So that's essentially the flip, is that it moves from us kind of taking information, taking consideration in, being able to maybe adjust or change or anything like that, which I don't know how much more adjusting we can possibly do, but that's where it flips.
There is one other important consideration in addition to what Leah just said. One of the things that people ask for is, how about some more detailed design? We want to see what this is going to look like. Until the board says we're a go, we can't really move on that. Once the board says to go, we can start getting some more detailed drawings and so forth, which people in the community have asked for, and frankly, some board members asked for too.
So I would say I don't need to hear from everybody tonight on the July 21st issue, but I would ask that you guys think about it and let me know how you're feeling in the next couple of days, because if we would like to put it on the 18th, if it's because we'd like to hold another town hall, another meeting like this, essentially, then we want to make sure that we get as far ahead of that as possible. I know we sent out postcards, but there's a very real, postcards can only get in the mail so quickly, and all of those things, and get to our residents so quickly, and that's the best way to get a hold of everybody. So if you guys can let me know, if you're not comfortable tonight telling me, then just let me know by the end of the week would be great.
So, I mean, we talked earlier about the ballot language and the inclusion or the exclusion of the mention of the property. The only thing that would keep me from wanting to vote on this on the 18th of July would be clarity on that. Mm-hmm. So if we get clarity on that, for me, it would be, I can't see any reason to wait until August.
And that clarity can be delivered via board update.
Right, it can be, yeah, that's what I'm expecting, so.
So is the question whether we're going to vote to move forward on the 21st?
She's just looking for our opinions on the, it's not, we're not making a decision tonight, yeah.
On July 21st, we would vote to either say yes or no that we're going to go for a referendum. Is that what you're saying? And between now and then, we don't have any other meetings to consider the ballot question that would be asked.
Correct. Not
So
a discussion, but it would be in
Yeah.
board reports.
Did this meeting did it fulfill the needs that we originally kind of set it out for, or do we feel like we need more?
I feel like we may need at least some discussion time on what the ballot question is. I don't think, I think that should be open and in public on what the actual question is going to be before we decide to move forward. And that's kind of my concern with making the decision on the 21st as opposed to the 18th.
Tim, do you have concerns about the current ballot question that can be addressed with the lawyers over the next couple weeks in order for you to get feedback on?
Well, I think that's what Jack has already said they're going to go do, but I do think that when we get to a point of having the question kind of decided on, I think it's something that the public deserves to hear us discuss before we vote on it.
Is there anything else, is there anything else in the ballot language as it exists right now? Because that's public information. The language is public information. Other than the location, the mention or the exclusion of mentioning the location, is there anything else in the ballot language that you would like to discuss? Because we can discuss.
I don't have it specifically in front of me. I was looking for a copy of it, and
So, I just reiterate that because we want to charge our administration with doing some work, so we have a clear question about location language. Like, I don't want to have arbitrary question about an arbitrary question about the ballot language. I want to have specific questions that we can have answers to. And I think part of that too is, even if you have more time, we are doing that over the next, you're making that decision. I think that is part of the decision. I have 5 questions about the language, but I think we need to give that information to the administration to say, answer this, 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 and this about the language, so then that can be made. And there's still a limit to that, how much we can say on there.
I do want to clarify something and suggest something that might solve for that. The ballot language is legal language, and we will not write that. It is not in our best interest to write it or adjust it at all. It's not in the community's best interest in any way, shape, or form. What we did last time, and we're allowed to do this on the agenda, is essentially we had 2 versions of the ballot measure on our agenda. And because we had them on the agenda, we were able to discuss them. And because we've already discussed the ballot measure, we essentially split it up. Because if I'm hearing this correctly, the question is, do we include the location or not in the ballot measure?
that's the major.
Am I grasping
That's
it?
the major question.
And that's,
If it's the major question, what are the minor questions? Can you say what they are?
I haven't. I mean, we're sitting. Do you want to go through word for word? You want to look at it? I don't know. I mean, I think that we.
But here's the thing. It is not appropriate or responsible use of our time to do that because it is illegal. It is something that the lawyers. So if my suggestion, my potential suggestion, and I'm not saying July 21st or 18th either. I'm just saying what we did last time, because we wanted to have some options and we wanted to have some understanding. We had 2 ballot measures. They were 2 separate agenda items. And then we voted yes for the one that the board decided to go with, and we voted no for the one that the board decided not to go with. So,
and Leah, let me clarify too. With that, it was a specific reason. It was the amount, and so it wasn't a vague if, and, or. It was instead of debating and making, we made the board members decide. We decided which amount, so we filled in the blanks essentially. So this would be, if the lawyers say.
One version that has the location named and one that doesn't,
right.
and then
That's
you vote on it.
It's something specific. So that's what I'm asking. Is there something specific you want to ask Jack to reach out to the lawyers to ask about that may need to be 2 ballot written, 'cause I think it has to be specific. We're not going to go word for word on the ballot language.
Right. I mean, I don't think we should. I mean, I think that maybe the 2 question suggestion is fine, and
Could that
one
work?
with the location, one without the location. I'd be okay with that. I mean, it's hard for me to sit here and tell you what I like or don't
Well,
like.
but we got that ballot language at our last meeting.
Right.
So, like, there's a piece of that part. There's a lot of it that is not responsible for us to go into. But if the piece of it is really the location and the yes or no and understanding the yes or no, I feel like, Jack, is it fair to assume that the lawyers would be able to get us that answer by our Friday update?
Tomorrow, Wednesday?
Yeah.
No, to be honest.
Next week, fair? So if they get it to us by next week, we're still only really talking about July 10th. We've still got enough time, so we could have some time to consider that individually before that. And look, if we get to July 21st and we put it on the agenda, okay, and we're not ready, you can take it. Carlos and I learned at that Board President's Academy the correct way to postpone it to our August meeting. So we could also go that way.
And we've done that with
We have done that,
other
yep.
things with the budget. And I just want to add that the lawyers may say, sure, add the location. We don't need two choices. If their suggestion is to put it on and make it out, I'm going to take their suggestion. I don't need to vote on which one I want. So.
Starting tomorrow, Ron's going to have the pleasure of watching this meeting and listening to the comments and sharing it with our attorneys, and they're going to answer your questions directly. I just don't want to promise by Friday because
Yeah.
with the
That's fair.
holiday,
No.
but
No.
by the following Friday, absolutely, and maybe even earlier than that. But I don't want to, because he'll watch this tomorrow, he'll share it with the people who do this for a living, develop this language for a living, and they will give answers to the questions the board have asked, and then come up with possibly new language, new ballot language, maybe two options. And so the following week, we will get that to everybody, certainly. And we could publicize it too.
Cool. So we'll get that at least by next week's. No need to do a separate board update. Our regular board update is perfectly fine. Anything else before we move on to the next round of public comment? No. Okay, so I have a statement for the end public comment, the same, right? So we've completed our discussion on the administration's recommendation for a referendum. But before we complete it, we also have public comment at the end. We have another public comment period. Again, this is an opportunity for the community members to address the board. Now, after you've heard our discussion that took place this evening, as with the earlier public comment period, we are here to listen and receive your comments for the record, but we are unable to engage in dialogue or respond to them directly at this time. Because this is occurring at the end of the meeting, there's not going to be additional board discussion tonight following public comment. We can't do that. So if there's any questions or concerns that you have remaining after tonight's meeting, again, I encourage you to contact the board or the administration directly, or both of us, for clarification specifically. And we ask the speakers to be respectful of everybody's time. Please avoid with, substantially repeating comments that have already been made. Let us know that you agree with it, but keep a note for everybody's time so that all of our community members are able to have their voice heard. So we are going to open up the floor for public comment. Again, the maximum time for a public comment is 5 minutes. With that said, Anthony DeLongis.
Hi again. Just a couple brief comments. I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals in Clarendon Hill, so I understand what you guys do a little bit. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I understand it's also very difficult to take comments from an entire community to make one decision as 7 people. That's not easy. But from that experience, I would also say I think there could be a little more clarity on what's going to happen at these meetings. There was obviously some discussion about voting on the admin's recommendation or not and when it's going to happen. I think it'd be really helpful if it was clear to the community when that was going to happen, because this meeting started with a recommendation from the administrative body, and I saw that as, oh, there's going to be a vote today on it. So just recommend or a comment on that and recommendation on how to clarify that. My other comment is on the actual language for the ballot measure. I'm also an attorney, so I see both sides of that as well, and I understand that there's to every single word that's in it and every single word that's not in it. But also as a community member, when people read the ballot measure, everybody here is familiar with what's going on. It's a very small percentage of the community that's familiar with what's going on. The actual voters are going to be reading that ballot measure for the first time, might see it for the first time, realizing that there's another referendum. They may not even know this is going on. So I think it should be as clear as possible with the location and exact dollar amounts. And I mean, obviously you're not going to get into eminent domain on it, but if the village has come to, or if the board has come to agreements with a lot of the homeowners, maybe even that's something that you want to consider putting in there, because if people think that properties are being taken, because obviously there's information that goes around on both sides, they may not have good guidance when they're reading that. So just a thought that a lot of people are going to be seeing that and learning about this for the first time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Nega?
Hello, my name's Keith Nega. You mentioned that the size of the building is shrunk. What is the new square footage going to be?
We can't respond during public
So it's
comment.
not going to be,
So
okay, so the 90,000 square foot, which is currently what we have now, is not going to be excuse me, the new building. So the new building is going to be smaller than what we have now, as I'm assuming. As far as costs, I'm figuring it, now you're not talking 90,000 square feet anymore. The cost has gone up over probably 40% since November. Well, I guess you can't answer. So is that going to go up again before the building construction starts, which is going to put us short on funds to finish the project? And as far as taxes, taxes never go down. Have you ever gotten a rebate from anybody? No. So we're going to pay and pay no matter what. So that's what I would like to find out at some point, but as far as the square footage of the building, I think that would be key. How small is small getting? You know, I mean, cost, that's a lot of money now. You went from 500 square foot to almost 800 a square foot on this last figure. I mean, I don't know what justifies that expense, but if I could find a business where I can get that much money in 6 months and raise my prices, I would be happy. So, all right, that is all I have.
Thanks, Keith. Lisa Lance?
I'm Lisa Lance. I have lived in Westmont for 16 years, and my kids have been a part of 201 for 9 years, and I've volunteered a lot, and I sub in our building. So I'm very familiar with our schools, and I just want to thank you again for advocating for our students. As a sub, I was in the building the day after the election, and I wanted to cry every time I saw a new student and felt like I needed to apologize to them. And so I just want to thank you for continuing to advocate when it is tiring and frustrating, when people are unkind, and you continue to show up for our children. I'm very thankful for that. I hope the fact that our referendum is being brought forward again is clearly communicating to our community the need, the necessity of this project. I think there's mutterings, right, of like, every time you bring this forward, we say, no, you're not listening to us. This is not like when my kid asks me for something and then I answer them, and then they just think if they ask in a different way, I'm going to suddenly say yes. You guys are bringing this to us again. The administration is bringing this to us again, not because it's a want, not because it would be fun or cool to have a new elementary school building, but because we have no other option. And so I'm thankful for you. I want to say thank you also. I see that you've really worked creatively to try to move things around, right? To try to figure out timelines and how things can be offset. And again, I just think that creativity needs to be stated and needs to be acknowledged. So thank you for that. Our kids, as you've said multiple times, and we know, our kids show up every single day for 201. And our faculty and staff and administration show up every single day for 201. And it's time for the community to do our part too. So thanks.
Thank you. Angela Steckity?
Hi all. I have had the pleasure of being on the opposite side of this microphone before. But 17 years ago, I moved to Westmont. We got the call, we came home with our oldest, we got the call that we got the house. Moved in, had a new baby, started learning about our town. He wasn't barely 3 months old, and I'm like, our high school really stinks. How do I send him to a different high school? But I've watched the growth, and we've done things. I think it's time to move to the next step to do beyond the education. Let's get the buildings going. I see a lot of strollers in town. Let's make it great for the next round of kids. My kids made it through. I have a senior this year. He's doing great, and he leads in every aspect. Basic classic, AP classes, honors classes, the sports he chooses. He's a roundabout guy. And Westmont did that. I just want to see, even if this happens again, and I don't want you guys to stop talking about this referendum, no matter what, no matter how the vote goes. Continue to talk about it. We need to grow physically the way we did mentally. So, thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Fletcher?
Thank you for your service. I think that I have made my position very clear. I'm a new resident of Westmont. We've never had children here. As a new resident, our home has recently, obviously, we just purchased it, so it's been reassessed, and that means higher taxes. I am in a position where we will pay a lot more money with this referendum. This referendum is needed desperately. You are well past a want. This is a need. I literally do not know what you would do if the next big rainstorm, the roof collapsed at Manning, which, from my understanding, is a distinct possibility. I hope the community can get behind this referendum. I think you guys are doing a great job. I would have liked to have seen a little less, as if you didn't understand the process with the discussion amongst yourselves tonight. There was almost a feeling of, well, we really haven't talked about this aspect of the referendum, or we haven't talked about that aspect. And I don't think that should have come out in a town hall meeting. I think you needed to present a much more unified front. But I hope it passes. I'm behind you. If you need help, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Day?
Hello. My thoughts are maybe a little bit different. I'm actually in favor of a new school. I'm a former teacher. I don't have an issue with raising taxes, but I live on Grant Street, across the street from the homes that will be taken to build the school. So my concern or comment or thoughts, if this does go through, is how will we be treated, those who are left behind, and what we're going to have to deal with, because if you drive anywhere around there for the past 2 summers, it's been a nightmare. The construction, the road construction has been a nightmare. And now, yes, this is needed, but how is it going, what's it going to do for us? And I just hope that the Village of Westmont does a better job of caring for those who are going to be left behind in the wake. If this happens, and I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but I think that's a concern, that for those of us who are going to live, I don't know how long it'll take, a year, 2 years, whatever the time frame will be, I want consideration to be made to the homeowners who are going to live through all of that, literally right across the street from my home. So that's just all. That's my biggest concern. And for my neighbors who are going to be losing their homes. And I hope that they truly are, as you say, in favor of selling. So, but that's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Richard?
Just a comment about, just the impact of the on people's tax bill. This tax calculator spreadsheet that was referred to in your documentation, dating back a couple months, I would like it to be available to the public so people could see their impact to their personal bill that they will be paying for the next 30 years. If I'm not mistaken, it'll be a separate line item. And, I was lucky enough to, be able to use that spreadsheet. I talked to, I think her name is Edith Corrigan. I may have mispronounced it, but and currently it's not available. And so for the people to see how it impacts them personally and to appreciate, your efforts to see how it impacts them personally. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other public comments? Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the June 30th, 2026 special meeting of the Board of Education. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Meeting is closed.